The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the largest, most expansive Zelda game in history, at the time of making this video anyway. If you are a regular or even semi-regular viewer of the channel, or just a viewer of Zelda content in general, then I'm sure that you'll know a popular topic in the Zelda community to discuss is mysteries and theories. The series has an intense amount of lore to delve into and create theories on, unravel mysteries, and explore the long history of Hyrule and other lands. But not all of these mysteries and theories have definitive answers, as we simply don't have enough evidence to come to a conclusion. Rather, they are left at a point of mystery, or in some cases, left with multiple potential answers. Today, I thought we could go over some of my favourite unexplainable mysteries in Breath of the Wild, as well as some of your guys' suggestions, and try to provide some sort of answer, if possible, as they really are unexplainable in some cases. Oh, and I'll be trying to avoid the commonly covered or very well known mysteries such as the Leviathans or Temple of Time placement, as there are already some fantastic videos out there on that. Oh, and if you think you can explain anything covered in the video, then be sure to leave a comment. Anyway, be sure to go and grab yourself a snack or drink and send them in to get featured right here, and let's take a look at these unexplainable mysteries in Breath of the Wild. Following the game's incredible tutorial, the majority of players head the way of the Dueling Peaks in search of Kakariko Village. You by no means have to go this way, but most do on their first playthrough, as the late King of Hyrule points you in that direction. If you follow this path, you'll eventually come across an empty monster camp just beside the Dueling Peaks. But why is it being abandoned? In my first playthrough, I remember seeing this but not really knowing what it was. I never viewed it as a monster camp, rather just some shelter for travellers. But as I learned what monster camps were, I never passed this one again. It wasn't until one of you in the comments pointed it out, or I believe a few of you actually, that I went back to check it out, and you're right, it is an abandoned monster camp. What's odd is that A, we find another monster camp just down the road and across the river, and B, they left supplies such as food and tools here, so where did they go? Killed? Driven out? Moved home? We simply don't know. The answer could be as simple as the developers originally intended to have monsters here, but maybe forgot to put in the actual monsters? I don't know. Maybe the monsters we see across the river once lived here, but moved in to stay more protected from the elements. It's not the most important mystery by any means, but certainly an interesting one to discuss. Next on our list of mysteries takes us to a location which I have always wanted to talk about, but never really had a reason to. That location is Tingle Island and its brother islands. And no, it is not purely because it is named after the legendary Tingle and his brothers. Rather, the mysterious aura I get from them. The islands, that is, not the Tingle and his brothers. They are located just off the eastern Akala coastline, a series of 4 small, slender islands, all connected by these long, a person with vertigo's worst nightmare, wooden bridges. That's me, by the way. I get vertigo sometimes. In the modern day, the only real purpose of them is the shrine on Tingle Island, which without gliding over if you have the stamina to do so, is only accessible by boarding the first island, Davdi Island. Then, to reach Tingle, you must cross the bridges taking you to Knuckle and Ankle Island, all whilst avoiding flying guardians. But the mystery here lies at the campsite we find on Tingle Island, and checkpoint markers found across the location. Hey there, it's your boy, Mr. Hyrule Gamer. Just a quick editor's note here. Whilst recording the footage for this video, I actually noticed that there is also a bow next to the checkpoint marker, which will further back up my theory on the island, which we'll be getting into right now. Someone was here, but who and why? Why live on an isolated island away from everybody? I mean, saying that out loud doesn't sound too bad actually. Peace and quiet, the soothing waves, and the beautiful sun rises and sets. Not too bad. That aside, it is clear that somebody, possibly a group of people, once lived here. The campsite we find doesn't appear to be of monster origin, as they tend to have one of these bad boys cooking some meat. Along with that is the storage boxes here, which are metal, likely that of Hylian or non-monster origin. You could argue that the monster stole them, but what you can't argue is these checkpoints. We see similar ones in the Hebra mountain range, and if it wasn't obvious, these are used to mark checkpoints. Some sort of traveller definitely visited here, and likely often. Why else would there be bridges connecting all of them? I highly doubt that these were here before the calamity, but this mystery gets even weirder. We can find actual guardians on the island. How? did they get here? The flying variant doesn't look strong enough to carry the larger tanks, and if they were, surely we would have seen that during the Calamity. There is no way that they crossed these slender bridges, and there doesn't seem to be any remains of a former natural crossing similar to the Terrytown Bridge. You could say that they were already here, but that doesn't make any sense, so I guess you couldn't say that. This is because we know all of the Guardians and Chica tech was stored at Hyrule Castle and the tech labs. It's a mystery that baffles me to this day. But before wrapping this one up, I would like to mention that in the trailer for Breath of the Wild, we saw a shot of Link scaling one of these bridges. Was there perhaps more to the islands prior to release, or was this simply just to show off the skill of the game? Regardless, who was the traveller who set up camp here, and how often did they come? And lastly, how on earth did these Guardians find their way over? We'll likely never know. The remains of Calamity Ganon's rampage are very evident. Places that were once called home now barely stand. Entire regions of the land deemed unsafe due to the amount of guardians roaming around. The Kingdom of Hyrule will never be the same following this catastrophic event, and whilst almost every significant character that died 100 years ago is honoured in one way or another, such as Revali having a landing named after him, Mipha having her own statue, and so on, the King of Hyrule doesn't have anything that is obvious in honour of him. But atop Mount Hylia, on the Great Plateau, we can find the King's Grave. Now, before I go any further, I must point out that this discovery was brought to my attention by Zeltic in an episode of Hyrule Highlights he did a while back, so be sure to check that video out too, links in the description. But it's a question about this grave which rings mystery in my ears. Who built the grave? One possible answer would be that someone knew of his death, but the issue with that is that how did they reach this point during the midst of the Calamity? It certainly couldn't have been after the Calamity, as during the Calamity itself the entrance was destroyed and blocked up, then the years following it filled up with water. That leaves us with one possible answer, the king himself. But for me, this seems a little odd. Making your own gravestone, I suppose it could make sense, and maybe it's just me finding it odd, but the question I then ask is, why specifically here, atop Mount Hylia? Well, we can't say for sure, but an interesting detail to note is that the old man, who is the king, can be seen standing up here from time to time, just gazing out onto Hyrule, the kingdom which was once his. Maybe the answer is that he built his grave here so that he could rest in view of his kingdom. That answer is very possible, but ultimately we can't actually say for sure. Despite the majority of Hyrule feeling the wrath of Calamity Ganon, a few settlements were lucky not to be caught out, one of which is Gerudo Town. Found in the vast scorching desert of southwest Hyrule, we can find this haven. As Gerudo tradition states, no Vo, or men, are allowed into their home. Not even the hero himself, who saves their town from the stampede of Valnaboris. But there may be an exception, or rather, an unknown in the town. If you enter disguised as a Vi, you can gain access to the town and find a couple of Gorons, and to be honest with you, when you see these Gorons at first, most would suspect that these are two Vi Gorons, hence why they are allowed in. But if you speak to them, we learn otherwise. They'll say things like, hang on, I thought men weren't allowed in this town. Why did they let me in? I was really shy, being all by myself and surrounded by girls like that. And even have somebody by the name of Tracy studying them and saying, male Gorons seem to have no trouble getting into Gerudo Town. So it is clear that even Tracy, a Hylian Vi, can tell that these Gorons are male. So why are they allowed in? As I already mentioned, even Link isn't allowed in, before or after saving the town. Well, one theory that has been suggested by fans is that they are part of a jewellery trade, as the Gorons hail from Death Mountain, which is rich in different gems and ores. Gerudo Town has a jewellery store, and the Gerudos seem to have a luxurious fashion taste. It is suggested that they are allowed in to deliver the goods, but this doesn't hold up if you ask me. Why? Well, that's because Gerudo Town has several entrances. I find it hard to believe that the Gorons couldn't rock up to one of these gates and hand off the goods there. Begging the question again, why are they allowed in? Surely if a Hylian Vi can recognise that they are male, so could the Gerudo. Well, the Gerudo actually can, as what Tracy says in English is actually different in the Japanese version, in which she says, apparently Gorons are treated like women by the Gerudo people, which I guess actually answers this one. At least the reason as to how they get in, but what is the reason for this treatment? Well, it isn't officially confirmed as far as I'm aware, but it is believed that the Gorons don't reproduce in the conventional way that Hylians would. Rather, the suggestion that all Gorons are male and asexual, their reproduction process being Budding, a type of asexual reproduction where a new organism develops from an outgrowth or bud due to cell division at one particular site. In this case, the rocks that grow on their backs grow until they fall off, becoming baby Gorons. So maybe we actually solved this one, with the answer being that Gorons are in fact male, but all asexual, which is why the Gerudo make an exception, which I find really nice to be honest. Thanks a ton for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing for more Zelda content. What do you think about these 4 mysteries? Are they unexplainable, or do you maybe have your own thoughts about them? I'd love to hear, so be sure to leave a comment and look out for my replies. As always, a huge special thank you goes out to all of my supporters across Patreon and YouTube, with special thanks to Cornelius for joining. If you'd like to join them and get yourself some behind the scenes looks at my work, a shout out upon joining, your name at the end of every video, and more, then consider supporting. Again, thanks for watching, and until the next time, I've been Hyrule Gamer.